Welcome all of you for the introduction session of the new Rapid Software Development module. Today, this would be the roadmap for today's session. Basically, we will be starting with the introduction to the basic course details along with the learning outcomes of it, and we will be comparing the previous year's syllabus with the current syllabus. More importantly, we will be talking about the exact extent of the learning to be happened, what you should know, and the common mistakes done by the students when they are going for the exams. So, let us start. Basic course details. As you all know, the course is a 4 credits one, and you will be having continuous assessments as well as a final assessment. The final exam paper will consist of 2 parts. The first section would be an MCQ paper with 30 multiple choice questions, which would be 1 hour, and the second section would be a structured paper that is also 1 hour. So, altogether the question paper would be a 2-hour one, and then you will be having 2 quizzes, 2 online assignments. 40% of the marks will be taken from the first quiz, and the next 60% would be taken from the second quiz. Remember, participating and finishing these quizzes before coming to the exam is compulsory for you to get qualified to obtain the year 2 certificate. All the learning materials can be found in the URL given in your virtual learning environment. The URL would be vle.bit.lk. These are the learning outcomes, intended learning outcomes of the module. After successfully completion of this course, you will be able to obtain a foundation of agile concepts and the methodologies. You will be understanding the practices and the application of agile practices in Scrum and XP extreme programming, and you will be learning how to apply the agile framework in software development projects. So, having that in mind, we will go for the syllabus. This is actually the current syllabus. As you can see, the right hand column gives you certain numbers, which are the hours you have to spend on learning each section of the course. For an example, to get to the introduction to agile software development, you have to spend only 1 hour. And then agile principles, and we will be talking about Scrum, the core concepts of Scrum, the Scrum roles, planning of it, and something called sprinting. And finally, we will be discussing a new section on alternative approaches to agile software development. So, altogether you have to spend at least 60 hours learning this module. Next, shall we compare the 2 syllabuses, the previous one and the new one. From the first look of it, the left side of the screen shows you the previous year's syllabus, and the right side of the screen, that is the current syllabus. From the first look of it, it is clear that the previous syllabus covers a lot of content from the surface level, whereas the current syllabus is taking a deep essence of the agile principles. More specifically, the current syllabus talks a lot about Scrum practices and extreme programming practices in detail. The next slide would explain it a bit more. So, the white color lines are the previous year syllabus, and the yellow color is for the mapping of it for the current year syllabus. For an example, at the previous year, we were giving an introduction to rapid software development, whereas the current year syllabus, we are introducing the agile software developments. And in the previous years, we were discussing about project estimation at a higher level, but this time we are discussing specifically how to do planning in Scrum, how to do the estimation, how to do scheduling, so on and so forth. So today's module, the new module, as you can see, is basically divided into two segments. First, Scrum, introduction to Scrum and Scrum practices, and the next section would be extreme programming. So what extent should you learn about these two things? That's the big question, and that's what we are going to answer next. What you should know in Scrum. Basically, you have to have a good understanding about the Scrum life cycle, more specifically the plan, inspect and adapt cycle, and then different stages of this Scrum life cycle: sprinting, daily Scrum, sprint reviews, retrospective. You should be able to explain in detail what is being done in each and every one of these planning segments and who are the responsible parties. As you know, there are three major roles in Scrum: the product owner, team and Scrum master. First of all, you should be able to explain the general roles and responsibilities of these people. Moreover, you have to explain, you should be able to understand the roles and responsibilities of these people in each and every one of these planning sessions. For an example, what's the role of product owner in sprint planning? What's the role of the development team in, let's say, daily Scrum? And then you have to understand the Scrum artifacts. What are the outcomes of each and every one of these sessions? As you generally, one output of a session becomes an input of another session. So it's very important for you to understand the flow of it and the artifacts or the outputs of each session. Let me explain this more with an example. Let's start with sprint planning. So when it comes to sprint planning, you need to understand what are the inputs. Usually the end users, customers, the team and different stakeholders get together and give the requirement to the product owner. Product owner evaluates the requirements, prioritize them and creates something called product backlog. And now you should be able to explain what product backlog is. How does the product owner creates the product backlog? And then the Scrum team gets together, discuss and selects what are the tasks from the product backlog that they will be developing in each sprint. So you should be able to explain the role of the team in this session, and then those selected tasks will be forwarded to another backlog called sprint backlog, and then the sprint will happen. The development team and the product owner and the Scrum master together will be working on the sprint, and we will be having something called daily Scrums. So now you have to explain you should be able to understand what a daily Scrum is. What is the role of each and every member in a daily Scrum? And then this iteration goes on, and finally they are outputting one outcome would be a potentially shippable product. So this whole cycle you should be able to understand and then explain. Likewise, you have to explain each and every planning session involved in the Scrum life cycle, along with the roles and responsibilities of the parties, as well as the Scrum artifacts. In the next session, we would be talking about the next module of our rapid software development section, that is extreme programming.
When it comes to extreme programming, the syllabus is consisted of 6 main topics. They are Introduction, XP Practices, Collaboration in XP, Planning Process, Product Development and Product Releasing. So, under each topic you are given the reference material and page numbers of those reference materials that you should refer into. But in addition to those reference material, you have to have an idea as to how we should apply these theories in practical situations by doing further reading and talking with people in industry sector. So, under introduction section, it describes the life cycle of a project which follows extreme programming. So, in this section you have to get to know how a particular iteration works, duration of an iteration and the team members' contribution in each section. When it comes to the extreme programming team size can differ from situation to situation and you must know the responsibilities of each team member as I said earlier. As you can see in this diagram, the programmers can get feedbacks in different time intervals rather than waiting till the end of the project, and you should be able to describe all these situations. For example, how we fix bugs in pair programming, unit testing and code review and so on. So, when it comes to XP practices, you should be able to define each and every practice and why do we use them and the benefit of these practices and so on. For example, we can take pair programming. You can just give the definition, but in addition to that you should be able to see that we can use pair programming in order to prevent bugs rather than fixing bugs at the end of the life cycle. Likewise, you should be able to discuss why we want them, their benefits and so on. In addition to that, you should be able to find how these theories can be applied in practical situations without restricting into the guidelines that you have given in the theory. For example, pair programming is defined as programming two programmers in a single computer by sitting together. But when it comes to the real world, we know that we can do that by using remote screen sharing being in two different countries. Likewise, you should be able to see the practical approach of each practice. And when it comes to collaboration in XP, there are subtopics listed down in this slide. As I mentioned earlier, you should be able to discuss each point rather than defining just the term. For example, we can compare sit together, pair programming and stand-up meetings. When we compare sit together and pair programming, it can be said that they are there to two different purposes. Most of the students had written wrong answers to the examination paper by misunderstanding these two concepts. The intention of this sit together is to get other team members respond quickly in particular situations and not to fix bugs by being together like in pair programming. When we compare the stand-up meetings and sit together, it can also be said that both of them have two different purposes and you should be able to compare and contrast each of these situations. Finally, you should be able to compare and contrast Scrum approach and extreme programming approach. This was there on the last year examination paper, and as I described earlier, not only these points but also you should be able to compare and contrast more properties in Scrum and XP. And now let us look at the common mistakes that you do in the examinations. so that you can omit those things when you are coming to the examination.
The next big question would be to how to answer the question paper, and we thought it would be best to show you the mistakes done by previous students and then explain how to write the answers to the paper. So shall we start with the first one? The first mistake that most students are making: not reading the question properly. Look at this question, and I'm reading: one important artifact of Scrum is the product backlog. Explain what the product backlog is with the help of a diagram. So can you see the diagram drawn by the student? This is actually not the product backlog. This is a diagram of the whole Scrum life cycle, or how the product backlog is created. The question clearly says you have to explain with sentences what the product backlog is, and then use a diagram to support your answer, which the student has not done. So for this type of a question answer, you are not getting marks. The next critical mistake: when writing answers, you are writing what you want to write, not the one you have been asked. Another example, the question would be: the product owner is an important member of any Scrum team. However, it is known that there are some projects that have a team of product owners. The question is: explain why a product needs a product owner team. I'm sure you can't read the answer written, so I have typed the answer. So this is basically the exact answer that the student has given. He says a product owner is an important member in Scrum team, which I have given in the question even. Because he is the owner of the product, the developers need to know the expectations of the product owner, how the software wants to come in the final. Product owner involves in every task in the development. I did not change the answer given by the student himself, so this is the exact answer that the student has provided. Can any of you see where he has mentioned about the product owner team? The question clearly says explain why a product needs a product owner team, whereas the student has explained who is a product owner. Another example that another student has given, and I have typed the same the answer that the student has given. Here also he is saying product owner is an important member of any Scrum team, and which is that part is actually written in the question, so you don't have to repeat the question again. Development team of Scrum team can discuss and identify the system requirements. Product owner is a facilitator of any Scrum team, assist the team in achieving iteration goals. Product owner have many responsibilities to the success of the project. This here again, he is talking about product owner, not the product owner team. So for this type of answers, you are getting 0 marks. Another mistake that the students are making is writing general answers. The question here is: list any 5 reasons why Code 360 should use Scrum as the software development methodology over their current practice. And I have again typed the answer. The answer says Scrum is one of the agile planning methods. Scrum is iterative process. Scrum is development using software look for process. And again, I am stressing this point. I did not change the answer given by the student. This is the exact answer that the student has written. In Scrum, plans can make adjustments. Scrum more emphasize the project plan. Where the 5 reasons are given, but does this talk about why the Code 360 should use Scrum over the current practice. The current practice was mentioned in the question is iterative waterfall. So basically the student has to compare the two together and give an answer. For example, it would increase the return of interest, and the Scrum focuses a lot on rapid delivery of the product, so it would faster delivery would be there. So those type of questions we are expecting. So we have given some marks for this particular answer, but not the full answers, full marks. Another example for writing general answers. The question is, what is the main difference between agile testing and traditional testing? The question is specific. You have to explain what agile testing and traditional testing is. Most of the students, a majority of the students has discussed or answered explaining traditional development and agile development, agile model and the traditional model, whereas we are expecting you to write specifically on agile testing and traditional testing. So if you discuss about agile methodology and traditional methodologies, you won't be getting the marks. The next big mistake that about 90% of the students has made. If you can read the question clearly says, if you read the latter part of the question, what is the best course of action for the testers on this team to take? The question gives 3 different procedures for the testers to take. So the question itself asks, what is the best course of action for the tester of the team to take, and justify the reason for you to select that option and to reject the other 2 options. So the question has 2 parts. You have to justify the reason for selecting the best procedure, and then you have to say why you rejected the other 2. This is a sample answer given by a student. Yes, he has selected a procedure and he is explaining why that is the best procedure, but the student fails to explain why he has rejected the other 2. Nothing has been mentioned about the next 2 procedures. So yes, the student will be getting marks, but not the full marks. Some amount of marks are allocated for explaining why he rejected. So that portion of marks he is missing. So basically that is all about the introduction of today's session of rapid software development. If I summarize what we have done, we have actually given you an introduction to the new rapid software development module along with a comparison of the previous year's syllabus and the current syllabus. And then one question we have been continuously asked is to what extent that you should learn the content. So I believe we have answered that question, and then we talked about the mistakes that most students are making and how to answer the question paper. So hope you all have learned something from this session. Thank you very much.